The Sicilian Defense is by far the most common chess opening, and today I'd love to share with you a simple, very beginner-friendly and aggressive opening system against it, which is the Grand Prix Attack. Now it works the best on amateur level. Here you just crush your opponents, but even on top level it works well. Carlsen has used it against Gukesh to get a winning position in 9 moves. We'll talk about that in a couple moments, but first let's just talk about the system itself and how do you play it. This game we're having a look at is between Asgarizadeh against Korbov playing black. By the way, white player is an international master, black player is a strong grandmaster, rated 2700 FIDE, so let's see how it rolls out. Now, white first goes pawn to f4 followed by knight to f3, and here's the difference compared to the main line where white plays pawn d4 instead. First off, we stay away from all the major theory, because if you go into the main line with pawn to d4, there are like 10 different systems that black can choose from, and that's really complex. Now, instead, when you play f4, you expand on the king side, and that propels you to attack in the middle game right there on the king side. It gives you a very clear, very simple, aggressive plan. We'll see which one in a moment. Black plays something, and here we go with bishop b5. In this system, we typically want to bring our bishop to b5 and at some point actually to trade it off, because we just don't need the bishop. We want to play d3, and if your bishop stands right there behind the pawn chain, then it just ends up being completely passive, right? Your own pawns limit your bishop. That's why you don't want that. You want to bring it out there to b5 and then later possibly to trade it off. Another great thing about the system is that black could play any other moves, right? They could play d6, e6, whatever. You'll still play the same moves. Now here black played knight d4, which looks like a little bit of a problem at first, but the thing is, your bishop is already defended. Therefore, you don't have to do anything actually. And white just did that. He just ignored this move and just castled. And okay, black traded the bishop, but after that the situation remains to be more or less the same. Black played knight f6, attacking the pawn. White played pawn d3, now black castles. And here comes the middle game plan of white. Thanks to these pawns on the king side, you have some space advantage there. And also there's one cool maneuver that becomes possible due to this pawn being on f4, not on f2. And the maneuver is queen e1 going to h4. Again, with the pawn on f2, this would not be possible, but now you can do it. And you bring your strongest piece into the attack, your queen. Now after this, black played something, white played queen h4. After this, black played c4, a little bit of a trick. Black actually prepares to play queen b6 and possibly double attack the king and the knight. I mean, quite creative, but again, doesn't change the situation in a whole. White goes knight c3, just bringing the knight back. Black traded on d3, and now black needs to develop the bishop. He played b6, aiming to develop the bishop somewhere there, and white plays f5. Very often, it is the beginning of the end for black. And objectively, white's position is better right here, but like practically, I'd say that if you get to this point, you will very often win games within the next like 5 moves, quite frequently. Just because after that you have so massive attack coming, and it's really difficult for black to figure out the right defense. In the game, black played bishop a6. We'll talk about this, but how about them just trying to take the pawn? What are you going to do then? Well, the fun thing is you're not even going to recapture, you just continue with your own plan. Now, after sacrificing this pawn, we achieve 2 goals. One is that we expose the king a little bit, because there is no pawn on g6 any longer, and secondly, you opened up this diagonal for your bishop, which makes it possible for you to move it forward either to g5 and put pressure down this diagonal, or more often to h6, where you trade off one of the last defenders of your opponent's king. Now, black will do whatever they want. For example, they take the next pawn, and you can again ignore your opponent and continue pushing your plan forward. You go with knight to g5. Now you bring the knight into the attack, and your plan, again, after any move of black, let's say they keep being greedy, they keep grabbing your pawns, but they are defenseless anyway. You trade off this defender. Now, you'd love to play queen takes h7 mate, but it's guarded by the knight. So what are you going to do? Eliminate the final defender, rook takes f6. Now you get to the ideal situation where you attack a lonely king, which is completely defenseless. If they take it with a pawn, now queen takes h7 would be checkmate in 1, and if they take it with a king, then it's pretty obvious that with such an exposed king, black can't survive for too long. You hit it, now it goes somewhere, queen takes h7, king goes, you keep checking the king, and now it's a rare case where a move pawn to h3 is not a prophylactic move, it's mate in 1. In the actual game, black did not take this pawn, he instead played bishop a6, attacking this pawn on d3, but your attack is so strong that you don't have to care. White still played the same move, bishop to h6. I want to show you a couple common attacking patterns, because that's exactly what you're going to be doing in the middle game. Now, after bishop h6, in the game, Black took the bishop. The question you may have is, what if they take this pawn? Now, computer says that your position is so strong that you don't even have to do anything fancy. You can just play rook d1, counterattack the bishop, and after that continue with your attack. But from my perspective, even if you just go into this all-out attack and let him grab the rook, you're still most likely going to win the game, just because in such positions it's really hard for Black to defend. Maybe Stockfish can do so, but real humans usually can't. Now, you still want the same thing, right? As we discussed previously, you want to take the bishop, trade pawns, rook f6, queen h7 mate, right? That's still your plan. They'll usually try something like knight h5, trying to block your queen, but then you take. Now what can they do? They can't move the knight because queen takes h7 would be checkmate, so king has to take. Now you can trade on g6 and also open up the file for your rook. And again, they're pretty much have to take it like this, because if they take with the f-pawn, that weakens this pawn square. We can go there with the royal fork to the queen and king, and you win the game. So they can't do that. Now finally, if they take it with this pawn, man, the easiest is just to play g4 and basically to push it back to the main attacking pattern. We want the knight to be removed from here and then to play queen h7 mate. If the knight comes here, you sack the rook to eliminate the final defender, and you then play queen h7. If he takes it with a king, you can keep attacking it. Usually it's pretty simple, because you attack a single king with a bunch of your pieces, and that means it's going to be pretty simple for you to checkmate it. Here's a little tactical challenge for you. There is another common tactical pattern here. Besides the move g4, which wins the game, there is another move which wins the game as well. Please think about this, and if you can find it, please write it down in comments below. It doesn't totally win the game, but it gives white a winning position. In the actual game, Black chose to take on h6. I want to illustrate here different lines which are possible, because your different opponents will play different moves. But knowing all these attacking patterns, you can always be prepared and you'll always know how to continue. Now, Black here played e6. He wants to play queen e7 and include his queen into the defense. White plays all same stuff, knight g5. And already is still the same. Want to play queen h7 mate. This knight is standing in the way. Want to trade it off, eliminate it anyhow. For example, if he takes this way, we don't even have to recapture. Our goal is just to take away this knight. So we can go knight d5, trade off, and play queen h7 mate. So that's not possible. In the game, Black played queen e7, which looks not too bad. Black is hoping for white to take somewhere, and if white were to do this after this trade, Black would use their queen to solidify the king side. But in the game, white played another move, which is certainly much stronger. White just wants to take away this knight, right? So let's attack it. He played e5, attacking the knight. Black captured knight e4, and Black just resigned. Now, there is no way for Black to avoid this trade, and after that, queen h7 is made. You can see how a strong grandmaster rated 2700 was completely devastated with this very simple attacking plan. And in the second game, Carlsen's playing white against Gukesh. Carlsen goes for the same Grand Prix attack. By the way, one interesting note. In the game, Gukesh played the same move pawn g6 that we analyzed previously. Lots of your opponents will play d6, right here or during one of the common moves. Why would they play this? Well, because first of all, that activates their bishop, and secondly, if they don't play this move at all but try to develop this knight, then you hit it with e5 and the knight has no good squares to go to, because your pieces, your knight and your queen, take away all the squares where this knight could go to, and it in fact has to go all the way back to g8, and they do not want this. Therefore, they want to prevent this move from happening by playing d6. And if they ever play this move, that's great for you, because you can play bishop b5 straight away, and now not only you develop your bishop to the desired position, but also you pin this knight, meaning you never have to worry about any knight d4 stuff, and possibly you can even trade it and double his pawns, or just simply continue your development in a usual way and continue with your attack. Now back to the game, Black still played the same move g6, knight f3, and bishop g7. Now, Carlsen played a3, which is a tricky move which I personally like a lot. Now, what's the point? It is kind of an awaiting move, but also a tricky move, like all in one. Basically, we're waiting for Black to play d6. We expect this move to happen, and if they played, we'll return back to our usual plan with bishop b5. That's what we want. That's why I said that it is an awaiting move. But also it's a tricky move, because if Black wants to avoid this, what can they possibly do? We know that knight f6 is not the move they want to play, because you can play e5 and kick it off straight away. Now what they're left with is possibly to play e6, and this is what Gukesh did. He wants to bring the knight right here so that he develops a knight, getting ready to castle, and you cannot attack it. But then there is an unusual and sudden attacking opportunity that Carlsen used is the move pawn to b4. Strangely enough, you sacrifice a pawn, and seemingly completely out of your plan and with no reason, looks like just a blunder and simple miscalculation that black attacks this pawn twice and you only defend it once. But of course, when Carlsen plays it, you know that it's not a miscalculation, right? It's deep opening prep. Now, the idea here is that we attack this pawn and maybe we're ready to go forward and attack the knight. Most of your opponents will certainly take the pawn because it's very hard to see why not to, and also black has to deal with these threats anyway. However, Gukesh played d5. We'll talk about that in a second. Let's first analyze, them taking this pawn, which is what your opponents will do most often. Now, at first, it's unclear why did you sacrifice a pawn, but here's why. After you play bishop a3, you attack this knight. And now you capitalize on the fact that black has a bunch of weak squares right there, and you want to attack them. After the knight goes back, you then play another offensive move, knight to b5, aiming for knight d6 check. And yes, you sacrifice the rook in the corner, but taking it is totally bad for black, because you've got this strong threat, and after bishop takes, you could take it and, strangely enough, counter their rook. That would be pretty nice. But even more straightforward is just to deliver this check, because it forces black to move the king to one of these squares where it's going to be x-rayed by the bishop. And you can continue with the discovered attack, and after this, it's check to the king, you grab the queen, then you can grab the bishop, hit the rook on h8, and you can see by the amount of errors that I drawn here that black is in trouble. Also, there's another common attacking pattern which catches your opponent by surprise. Sometimes your opponent figures it out that his king is in danger. You want to go knight d6 and use your knight and bishop to attack it. So they play knight e7, the move they were going to play anyway, hoping to castle, but also, now if you go knight d6, king hides there, there is this knight that's blocking the diagonal and black feels good. But besides knight d6, you have one more idea, which is bishop to d6. And first off, you completely blockade his position. Now it's going to be really difficult for them to untangle all these pieces and to bring them into play. Also, you create the threat of knight going here to c7, which is going to be a fork to the king and rook. But your opponent still feels good. They think, hey, I will go into castle anyway, and now after knight to c7, there is no check to my king. So your opponent thinks that he's good, but in fact it's not the case, because all of a sudden you play bishop c7, queen e8 is the only move, and now knight d6 is a very unusual way to capture and trap your opponent's queen. Gukesh, being a strong grandmaster, realized that and played d5, trying to counter-strike in the center. But Carlsen stayed cool and just played e5 to blockade the bishop, and now Gukesh traded on b4. Here is all the same thing. Black could theoretically capture this pawn, but they would get under the same attack. White would play, bishop a3, taking control of this diagonal, maybe knight b5, d6 check, and black would be in trouble. Therefore, in the game, Gukesh played knight h6, just aiming to castle, and now after b5, attacking the knight, knight goes back, although black avoided being checkmated immediately, but he got into a strategically lost position. By the way, let me just share with you this one little thing which I think can be really, really helpful. I was an international master at the time, and I was coached by Malanuk, who was, during his prime, one of the top-level GMs. And what I noticed is that while I think about a position, I think about a move. I'm thinking about which move to play. And he thinks in terms of planning, like what is your plan, what is your opponent's plan. And that allows him to see much deeper into the position and to understand it better. And he would say about this position that it is winning for white already. While for me, it would seem completely counterintuitive, because there are no threats to the black king and there's no way to capture any material, so why would you say that white is winning? But the fact is, after, let's say, d4, which happened in the game, if you look at this position overall, you realize that, black's pieces are very cramped and they have nothing to do really. This bishop is blocked by white's pawn chain. This bishop can't get out, right? He has only one square to go to. The knights, they also have only one square to go to, which is f5. But as soon as you go there, white can play g4 and push it back, which means that black is completely stuck. Also, white can play bishop a3 and put more pressure down this diagonal, again restricting black further, which means that black has nothing to do really. And within the next couple moves, like 5 moves or so, white would just finish his development, activate pieces further, and will have a totally dominant position, and then black will have nothing to do. So that's how analyzing plans and understanding all these positional aspects of the position helps you to understand it much deeper and much better. By the way, if you're curious about this, I've got a masterclass where I go much deeper into the positional chess. So it's a free masterclass. You can find a link below in the description and you can check it out. For now, let's continue with the game. In the game, Gukesh castled, Carlsen played bishop d3, so far both sides just develop pieces, a6, bishop a3, white puts the bishop to this active diagonal and pins the knight. After this trade, Gukesh played knight f5. Ideally, white would love to play g4 and kick it back, but now white needs to be careful because the knight is ready to go forward with a fork. So Carlsen first played queen d2 to take away the square, and now he's ready to play g4. Gukesh tried queen b6, hoping to counterattack right here, but bishop c5 pushes the queen back. After queen to d8, now Carlsen traded rooks, played g4 finally, and Gukesh just resigned. It turns out that this knight is attacked, but it can't go away because then black would lose the knight and the rook being attacked, and black just resigned. I do hope that it helps, and it's a really simple and aggressive opening system against the Sicilian Defense. I do understand though that some of you will write to me in comments that it's all good, but I will forget everything in 2 minutes. I understand it is not easy. That's why I recently recorded another video showing how I memorized over 100 chess openings easily, and you can check it out right here.